It's a murder scene that could have been ripped from an episode of The Sopranos if they had lived in Texas.
That was easily one of the worst days of my life.
The multi-millionaire owner of a trash collection company, a race car driver, a ladies' man, shot to death in his easy chair, execution style.
But he was shot in the head, chest, and leg.
Bullets, blood, and a blanket.
I've seen him sleep in that chair a million times, but never with a blanket over his head.
Crime Watch Daily with cops investigating the mysterious murder of Henry Gutierrez. So that's Henry.
It's Henry's feet.
Was he killed by a drifter? A jealous husband out for revenge?
He was an eligible bachelor, so.
Or was the killer someone he knew? Henry Gutierrez lived in Schertz, Texas, a suburb of San Antonio. It's been ranked as one of the best places to live in the U.S.
We have a population, I think, right now of 36,000. I consider it a small community. We're pretty close for outside San Antonio, but we don't have a big crime rate here.
Was Henry one of the richest men in town?
In Schertz, most likely. He was one of the richer people, money-wise, in Schertz.
But despite his many millions, Henry didn't flaunt his wealth.
Your father was very successful.
Yes, ma'am.
But he lived kind of a modest life.
You wouldn't know that he was a multimillionaire if you looked at him, that's for sure. He's kind of a hippie.
A hippie who made a lot of green from garbage.
Tell me about the family business.
My mother started a garbage company, and she would go from house to house asking if she could pick up their garbage for $2.50 a month.
And it went from that to a multi-million-dollar company.
Yes, ma'am.
That is the true American dream.
Yes, it is.
Henry took over the company after his father died and eventually sold it. Then he started up another trash company, a handshake agreement to partner with his old friend, Efren Gonzalez.
So he started up another one with Gonzalez in the early 90s, and that was a very successful company. It was sold in 1997. I believe that company sold for about $6 or $7 million.
Henry devoted his energies to drag racing and his other hobby, women.
My dad was, he was an eligible bachelor, so.
An eligible millionaire
Right,
bachelor.
right, yeah.
So he had a lot of girlfriends.
Yeah.
But garbage was in Henry's DNA, so he started up a third, that's right, a third trash company, Bare Waste, with his Uncle George.
And how big was the waste disposal company that you had at the time?
We were running right at about 55 trucks every day. It was a multi-million-dollar business, yes, ma'am.
George says with Bare Waste, Henry and his buddy Efren made another handshake agreement. Not, he says, as partners, but for Efren to provide equipment and maintenance.
Well, this whole Texas handshake thing is kind of new to me. So is that how it works in Texas? A handshake is a deal?
No. But at first, that's the way it started out as.
Around these parts, Henry was well respected.
He was also known very well in the political community in Bexar County. He had done a lot of good things with the city. He always, around Christmas time, brought things to the different employees, fire department, police department.
But that all came to a bloody end on Christmas Eve 2 years ago. Henry and his Uncle George were going to sell Bare Waste to a multi-billion-dollar company.
Him and I had a meeting that morning at 9 a.m. He didn't show up.
So George tracked down Henry's son Miguel, the company's VP.
Our HR gal and our receptionist came in. She said, "Your Uncle George is on the phone, and he can't get a hold of your dad."
And that's weird for your dad not to show up for a really important business meeting.
Yeah, for this meeting, there was really no explanation for him to miss it because it was going to be an initial meeting about the sale of the business and how things, were going to progress.
Miguel rushed to his dad's house, and what he says he saw shocked him senseless.
As I looked through the glass pane, I could clearly see him in the chair with a plaid blanket over him. And his boots, I could just see his boots sticking out. And I saw a shell casing on the floor, and I knew that something terrible had happened. And I just kind of collapsed for a second. And it's just, I think I was shouting, "Dad, Dad," and "No, no."
Miguel was breathless when he spoke to the 911 operator.
It's Henry Gutierrez house up behind the funeral home.
Henry was dead in what looked like an execution-style slaying.
So, given that he had a blanket over him, that he was sitting in a recliner, what do you make of this?
The blanket would indicate to me normally that someone that was close to him or knew him would do something like that, so you don't see the face of the person.
So, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, it's not a normal thing to have a blanket over your head. So, if you try and put a blanket over someone's head, they're going to fight.
If they're conscious, yes, ma'am, they would fight.
So, what are you suggesting?
That Henry was deceased when the blanket went over his head.
Henry's car was missing too, as was this ring his family says he always wore. The crime scene photos show someone ransacked the place.
Was there any DNA evidence, anybody's other DNA or other fingerprints in the house?
We did recover one unknown fingerprint, and all the DNA we found in the house came back to Henry.
Where was Henry's car?
We found Henry's car months later. It was recovered in San Marcos, which is about 20 miles from here, north, and it was recovered in a parking lot of an apartment.
Any connection to that apartment building or anything?
No, ma'am, we canvassed the apartment building and weren't able to find anything or anybody that's seen anybody there, and we weren't able to get any forensic evidence from the car.
But cops did discover other items missing from Henry's house. Some Christmas gift cards.
3 were taken, and I believe there were 5 there. Henry routinely gave those out for Christmas as gifts.
So what is unusual about the gift cards?
To me, the unusual part about the gift cards is if I was to steal the gift cards, I would take all of them, not necessarily just 3.
Cops say this man, possibly a transient, sold the gift cards to 3 unsuspecting people in Houston.
Car in one direction, gift cards in another city.
Correct.
It makes it seem like the leads are going every which way.
Correct.
Pointing every which way except to the identity of the killer. Cops wonder if the answers would be found closer to home.
Someone went in and obviously killed Henry for either money or something to do with the business.
Do you think Henry was killed by someone he knew?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Next, did Henry's business dealings lead to his demise? Then, a key clue emerges.
Henry had changed the will.
Will Henry's new will change the police investigation?
Police have not ruled out family members, including you, as being a person of interest. You could see his cowboy boots. He always wore cowboy boots.
That was really all that you could see was his boots sticking out from underneath it. I can remember.